But I think I was very excited to play Anna because queerness was not part of her storyline. It wasn't. I think it's equally as important of representation to just have queer people exist in a story and not draw any attention to it in any way, just like you wouldn't draw attention to somebody being straight or to somebody being cis or to somebody being white. I think it's really exciting to just play a character that is existing in these circumstances and nobody has an issue with it. It's not fraught because of that. It's fraught because of the specificity of their relationship and their marriage.
So I think the big first question is this ensemble is insane, incredibly talented, the Mandy of it all. How is it, going into this, shooting this and getting able to work with this incredible cast for you?
I mean, it was such a dream, honestly. I knew some of the people who were going to be involved. Like, I knew about Mandy when I was cast, and that was extremely exciting, and especially being a New Yorker and a theater person, and knowing that he was going to be a part of the show. And then as the cast continued to fill out, I mean, I think the thing that excited me was that it was such a mix of both people like Mandy, who are legendary, and also actors like Linda Emond, who's an amazing New York theater actor, and Jane Atkinson, who plays my mom. But then it was also a lot of people who were kind of like me, like this was a big TV job for them, like a big sort of leap. And people like Perdis, who plays my wife, and that's something I love about the show, is that it's not just like stacked with people that you already know, but they really cast a wide net for these characters. So I was excited by the fact that it was such a range of people.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing that the show does so well is you have the ability to be able to interact with everyone in a way that I think shows with such large ensembles usually maybe have a tricky time doing. Was that something that also kind of initially drew you into wanting to play Anna?
Yeah, I think especially Anna's sort of a lucky character in that it's her family is on board, and so there's a lot of other characters we sort of hear about their relationships off ship. And for Anna, so many, really the most important people in her life are all on the ship, and so I think getting to do scenes with so many different people, and also there's a few episodes that have these really big group scenes where we would be on set all together for a few days, sort of doing the deja vu of filming these long group scenes over and over again. But it was really fun to get to be together as an ensemble in those moments.
Yeah, well, are you like historically a fan of the murder mystery? Because it's such a fun take on the genre that feels like fresh and different.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm not like an aficionado, I'm learning now with the show that people are really, really excellent at theorizing and figuring it out. Like I didn't really know this, that it was such a vibe to be theorizing, online and everything and figuring out all the clues. People are wildly intelligent. So I wasn't quite like that, but I grew up with Agatha Christie stuff and Sherlock Holmes and like Nancy Drew and sort of the murder mystery book genre. And then how that also translates to plays, like seeing plays in this genre was also really fun for me when I was younger. But I think we're also seeing cool resurgence of it on television, and so I feel like it's exciting to be part of that moment when so many cool murder mysteries are happening on TV.
Yeah, definitely. What kinds of inspiration did you have when you're coming to shaping Anna as a character? There's so much happening with her, because like you said, we get to see all of her family interactions. We get to see the interactions with her wife. Also like she's incredibly capable and obviously more than deserving of this CEO role. What kinds of things did you kind of like look toward and inflections and things like that you wanted to bring to the character?
I think I was really interested. I was really interested in what a woman like this, with this experience of growing up with an unbelievable amount of wealth and just never knowing anything different. I find in stories about class and differences in class, I find it really interesting the blinders that wealthy people can have, and just that they don't even recognize what they don't know in some ways about regular life. And I was interested in a person who is, as you said, so capable and deserving in some ways of what she has, and sort of stepping into the CEO role. And I think it feels very sensitive for her that it isn't a case of nepotism to her, but that she's worked for it and it is worked very hard for it. But at the same time, what is a person who has grown up in a way that the majority of people can't even dream of growing up? And so I think I looked a lot at sort of like American heiresses. I was looking at kind of women like Ivanka Trump and people like Georgina Bloomberg, and even going outside of America, Delphine Renault, who is the daughter in this like wealthy fashion magnate family and company. I was just really interested, and a lot of times they are the only women in their families and surrounded by a lot of men too. So I kind of went down that route and did a bit of a deep dive on women like that and how they carried themselves and the sort of things that they did to prove their worth, I suppose.
Well, and I mean, one thing that I think is so fun about the character also is the clothing becomes another, like a whole other part of Anna. How was it working with a costume designer and getting to wear all those fantastic clothes?
Yeah, it was great. It was really great. I mean, it's so wildly different from how I dress and how I am in my life. I'm not right now necessarily, but I'm generally pretty boyish. And so it was really essential for me in feeling how she literally moved through the world. And Mandy Line, our costume designer, is incredible and has already sort of made a career of creating visual worlds for shows that become iconic. Like she was the costume designer for Pretty Little Liars, which sort of became like a fashion show. And yeah, I think that we both felt clear from the beginning that she would have this sort of classic line to her and sort of like a powerful yet also soft and feminine feel. And she also is in heels the whole time, and like down to I was in a nail salon every 3 weeks getting my nails redone because I'm a horrible nail biter, and I just like knew she wouldn't. I knew that I would be so angry if I watched the show and it was like my gross nails with her. And so it's like down to every detail, really trying to create a person who clearly thinks through every little aspect of how she is coming across.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you have two like really core and important relationships with women on the show. Obviously with Pardis, who plays your wife, and then with Violet Bean's character as well. How was it kind of like working with both of them and creating those two very different relationships?
Yeah. I mean, I think with Violet, it felt remarkably easy with both of them. I think that Violet and I are not necessarily like our characters, but I think energetically we're different in a way that's similar. And so I think that really felt like a case of fortunate casting, and that I think the way that we naturally differ and sort of vibe with each other has that feel of two women who are quite different, but still sort of in some ways because of that form this tight bond. So I really loved, things were very fun with Violet, especially figuring out the beginning of the show and seeing their relationship before it starts to fray. And I think with Perdis, we were really concerned with like knowing for ourselves and talking about and finding the moments where we could show their love for each other, because I think that was a challenge of meeting these women at a moment in which they're not doing well, you know? And what we were nervous about, and I think really wanted to work and on our end to try to offset, was we didn't want the audience to watch and be like, why are they together? Like, why are they together? You know, because I think that sometimes when you enter a story when it's not good, and also, you know, Anna's not doing great things during the show in regards to her wife, like I think that we wanted people to root for them still. We wanted people to see that they loved each other and understand why they got married and why them having this level of difficulty in their relationship is so destabilizing for both of them.
Well, and I love that you brought that up because, like, Anna is, I feel like we're finally getting such great queer characters on television and media at large that, can be bad people and be complicated, and their sexuality is just like, okay, sure, she has a wife, like, no big deal. And I think you, in your career, have really, like, set out to play a lot of really wonderful, nuanced queer characters. Was that kind of the draw for Anna for you? And how does it feel like that you're, like, a part of, like, bringing, like, more complex queer characters to screen?
It's funny. I wouldn't say that I ever set out intentionally to do that. I think I've been really fortunate that the roles that I've been drawn to and the things that I've really fought for and then been cast in have been those characters. And I think it wasn't necessarily a particular goal of mine. It's just, but that I think is part of what happens in a career is sort of the work that you do. It's like things attract each other, and I just think that ultimately the kind of work that I've been interested in has been simultaneously creating characters that are complex and in that way, and showing real queer people and not queer people that need to be some kind of model in order for us to feel like you won't hate us for being queer, But I think I was very excited to play Anna because queerness was not part of her storyline. It wasn't, I think it's equally as important of representation to just have queer people exist in a story and not draw any attention to it in any way, just like you wouldn't draw attention to somebody being straight or to somebody being cis or to somebody being white. I think it's really exciting to just play a character that is existing in these circumstances and nobody has an issue with it. It's not fraught because of that. It's fraught because of the specificity of their relationship and their marriage. So I was very excited about that. And I think, it's cool to play somebody who's like really making mistakes, And I think that as a queer viewer, I can get frustrated when I see writing or characters where I feel like I'm watching a PSA and it just doesn't, and then it just doesn't feel like my life. And I'm like, is this helping? You know what I mean? Like, is this helping me? I'm a queer person watching it and it doesn't feel real to me. And I don't want our media to become about teaching straight people that we deserve to have dignity,
Well, and this obviously must have been a huge, like, kind of production. Do you feel like, just in terms of like filming and great, like, huge sets, how do you feel like your work in the theater has, like, what kind of skills do you think your work in the theater gave you to come to a production of this, like, nature?
Yeah. I think that it was very cool working on a show that had these really big sets. I mean, we filmed all over the place, and we did film on boats. We filmed on the Queen Mary, but a lot of the then interiors and stuff were built. And I think, like, for instance, the promenade deck is something that was built, and it's this massive 2-level set. And I think that is more of what I'm used to. Like, if you're gonna have a ship, if you're gonna do anything goes or whatever, like, it's gonna be on the stage, period, And so I do have experience of being in theaters where these unbelievable massive sets are built to create this world. And I feel like the production values of this show were so high, and everybody was so meticulous. And it didn't often feel like, I wasn't like, talk to this tennis ball, or like, here's a really tiny room that we're gonna make look big from the camera angle. Like, we were in these massive, beautiful staterooms and stuff. So I think that in some ways it just was more comfortable for me because that's what I'm used to. So it prepared me in that it felt easy for me, easier than sometimes it can feel on television. Yeah.
Well, you get to have, like, a really beautiful musical number in this episode that everyone just watched. What was it like filming that? And yeah, I mean, it's just like, like, was that something you were expecting was going to happen? Like that you were going to have a whole like a song and dance, if you will, which I do think really teases the trajectory of the last several episodes of the show for sure.
Yeah, I think it's this fun sort of unexpected, strange moment that I think works really well in the show, especially because it just created a circumstance in which you see her kind of vulnerable and being silly, which she just never lets herself be. And I think the fun part about the scene is that only about half of it was written to be in the show. And so when I finally saw the episode, the creators did not tell me that they had kept our entire last take that they just never called cut on in it. And so it was supposed to end, I think it ends, there's like a montage part where Imogen and Rufus says, "Oh God, I'm glad you're not harmed," and everything. It was supposed to sort of end around there. And then me and Jack, who plays my brother, Trip, they just didn't call cut on the last take, and we just kept going, and we're just messing around together, and then the whole thing ended up in the show, which I thought, I was like, that'll be a very funny blooper that we'll probably never see the light of day, and then no, it was actually in the whole episode. So that was the big surprise of that one.
What did you and Jack think about that when you both realized it?
I thought it was hilarious. I don't even know if Jack has seen it yet, because the last time I talked to him, he was like, "No, I haven't watched it yet." I was like, get ready for it. It was, us, like, we didn't know the lyrics, but we just, as is in the show, and we just kept doing it. But I think it works because Jack and I sort of had this very brother-sister vibe and feel to us. And at that point, filming in episode 6, we're over halfway through the season, and I think we had just sort of marinated in that dynamic. And so getting to play around with it in any way was always one of our favorite things to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the scene is like so joyful, but also I think is showing kind of where Anna's head is at. Like, it seems like they're on the brink of divorce. The company seems like is rapidly like crushing around itself or whatever, crashing around itself. What can you tease for Anna going forward for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I think she is like actually nothing that she imagined about this trip is happening, and like everything that could go wrong is going wrong, and in bigger ways than I think she could have thought. So I think that, which I felt so fun to be playing a character that starts in such a wildly different place than where she ends. And I think that it somehow only gets worse, which is incredible for her. But yeah, I think what you're going to see in the last few episodes of the season is sort of what happens to her when she gets pushed to that level, because she works very hard to keep it together for a very long time. And I think she ends up being a person who gets pushed, and you sort of see the like true stuff come out when a person gets pushed like that. So that'll be the last few episodes.
You have quite a busy couple months. Aside from just having a couple more episodes of this show, you have a EP of covers coming out on March 8th. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I am a musician as well, and my band and I have been playing live concerts in New York for a handful of years now, and we decided to record our 5 best covers that we do. We do all cover songs, and there's actually 2 singles out right now, and the 3rd one is coming out on Friday, and it's streaming everywhere if you feel like listening, primarily on Spotify, but other places too. And it was just something that I wanted to have an actual record of what we do, because we were only doing it live, which is like my nature as a theater person. But I think wanting to push myself and extend into a recording space and see what that felt like, and have something so that people can listen to it when they're not at our handful of concerts that happen every once in a while. And so we're going to do an EP release concert on March 11th at Mercury Lounge, which I think will be really fun and get to celebrate what we made.
Yeah. And how it was, did you feel like the recording process was like very different from like obviously doing live shows and live performance?
Yeah. It felt similar to how different theater and television can feel. Like trying to create, you can just do so much more in a recording space as far as layers of sound that you can do, and even like thinking about vocally how to do vocal layering and background vocals and all these things that I've just never even thought about, because it's just me and what can I do, my one voice on stage at one time. So it was both a challenge and then really exciting when I started to be able to open up my mind in that way to fleshing things out in a way that was just never accessible live.
Yeah. Well, and you're also bringing your show, The Lonely Few, which I know already ran in LA in the spring. Can you talk a little bit about that? You're coming back to your roots.
Yes. Yeah. I started working on a new musical in, I want to say, 2022, early 2022, started the development process for it, and we did a production in 2023 at the Geffen Playhouse in Los Angeles, and it's called The Lonely Few. It's a queer love story. It's about two women who are musicians, and my character Lila has a band in a rural town in Kentucky, and this singer-songwriter passes through and invites this band to be her opener on her small tour. And yeah, it's really like, it's both a beautiful love story between these two women, but it's also a lot about like the beauty and also the trappings of where you come from and responsibility to family, and I think like the push and pull of choosing yourself over love, choosing yourself over your family, all of these things. So I'm very proud of it, and it was great to do the first production in LA, but I'm excited to do it here. Excited to be off Broadway in the spring. Yeah.
Have you started rehearsals?
We start next month. So I think in about probably around a month from now, we start rehearsals. So it'll be here before I know it.
Yeah. Are you excited? Because it seems like, you haven't been in the theater space for a little bit. You obviously have been hanging out with the Hulu, the Hulu gods.
Yes.
All right. What are you looking forward to, like, kind of coming back into like your theatrical roots?
I think I'm just excited. It's always so lovely to do a show in New York, and I think it's when you're home and you get to be in your home, and also I think in the theater community here, which is so supportive and really also like tight knit. I mean, that was the biggest thing that blew me away when I moved to New York and I was in my first show, was like how small actually it feels, even though when you grow up and you're like Broadway and it feels like the biggest thing in the world. So I'm excited to do a show here again and to do something new, because also just musicals take a long time to develop and you work on them for a long time. And so I think I was with my last show, Jagged Little Pill, for years, and I haven't been on stage in a while, but I also haven't done something besides that in many years. And so the nature of like how long you spend with a piece, I'm excited to bring something new for myself here in the city. Yeah.
Amazing. So we have one question from the audience from Ryan Z, who has a couple, wants to know, how is acting for TV and film versus theater kind of differ for you? And and how does the direction differ as well?
Yeah, super interesting questions. I think from an acting perspective, there's a lot that feels different. I don't know. I think different actors have different feelings about it. Some people say they're like, it's not that different, and people make a huge deal out of it. And then some people do feel it's quite different. I think there's sort of the traditional answer of like, it's more physical on stage, and then you have to use stillness more for camera. And while I find that to be true, I think the thing that actually feels so intensely different to me is process, like just the process of preparing and filming is so wildly different from theater. And I think in some ways, not in a negative way, just kind of threw me for a loop. It was a challenge because I'm so used to the process of like marinating in something for a long time, and you try something one day and you go back home and you think about it, and then you come back to work the next day and you try something different. And I realized about halfway through filming this season that I was still thinking that way. And I said to myself, you have to let go. You have to let go of scenes. It's done. Like, you will never ever do that scene ever again. And I would be home 2 days after and be like, well, I wonder if like that would have been interesting if I could have done that choice, or what about maybe, I don't know if that landed, and so we could go back. And I would just be unconsciously thinking about ways to try new things. And that could drive me a little crazy because then I had no outlet to do that with. And so there's like a process to learn about doing it and truly letting it go and on to the next and looking forward. That is so different from theater. And then on the direction side, I think the challenge for TV is that you have different directors all the time. And I think for our show, we filmed in blocks, which is when you film multiple episodes at a time. So we filmed in 2-episode blocks. So if you watch the show and you watch the credits, you'll see that every 2 episodes is the same director. So that meant that we had 3 or 4 weeks-ish, probably more like 3 with one director instead of only like 10 days or something, which was great. But again, with theater, you just have time to develop that relationship with the director and shorthand. And with television, the pace is just quicker and things are changing really rapidly. And so I think getting to know how it's like a cool different version of communicating, where then you're figuring out how does this director work and how do they communicate about how do they give notes, how do they communicate about what they're looking for, how do they run a set, all this stuff. And so it keeps you on your toes in that way, and it's exciting. But I think television has a lot of letting go, a lot of like a light touch with things because it just moves a lot quicker.
Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Everyone, give Lauren a round of applause. Make sure to catch the last several episodes because, trust me, you're going to want to watch that last episode for sure. And thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming.